I got Mike Tissaw here today on tonight on Nova Legends podcast. Mike was when I went to Robinson as a seventh grader in 1978. Mike Tissaw was a giant. He was a great basketball player, great athlete at Robinson. I remember when I first saw him in the gym, I was just in awe of this guy. I was a little guy, still am, and then I got the chance to watch him play that season. Did some great things, and then he went on and played at Duke. Played for Coach Gracza at Duke, and I understand you've had a long career as a professor, and looking forward to hearing all about it. Thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I think this is going to be enjoyable. You have me taking a long trip down memory lane.
That's right. Well, hopefully it's not that long ago. I mean, maybe we are getting a little old now, but yeah. It has been fun to reconnect with guys like Pete Holbert and Arnie Russell, Chris Thompson, guys you did battle with, and guys that I worship because when you're a young player, those are the guys you look up to.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when I was 14, 15 years old going to some of the games, and people like Chris Scott and Joel Patten and Craig Brewer and Bucky Roman and other people around the area were just kind of like gods to me, you know?
Yeah. So Mike, did you always live in the Fairfax area? Were you born there?
Oh no. My dad was 32 years in the Air Force. And so I was born in Chicopee, Massachusetts. And we went to Abilene, Texas, Dyess Air Force Base, Grand Forks, North Dakota, Mountain Home, Idaho, and then Spokane, Washington, while my dad was in Vietnam, and then to Ramstein, Germany, and then to Northern Virginia.
So how old were you when you got to Northern Virginia?
13 and a half, 14.
Yeah. And were you already a basketball player at the time? Had you played in all your father's various stops?
Well, my dad had me playing football, basketball, baseball in Germany. He kind of insisted, you know, and I was better at football than anything. I only remember one team name from back then, and it was the Rockets. I have a picture on my wall of me taking a shot. I must have been, I don't know, 10 years old. And I'll put it this way. When it came to basketball back then, I tried out for the junior Rams. It was Ramstein Air Force Base, so we were the Rams. And the junior Rams, when I was in seventh grade, I did not finish seventh grade in Germany, but I tried out for that team and I got cut. And it crushed me. And so I started at Robinson, I think, just with 2 or 3 weeks left in my seventh grade year.
Yeah, so it was an interesting time at Robinson. So when you first got there, I bet, at least when I first got there in 78, the first thing you noticed was all these kids were at the smoking lounge. We had like 1,000 kids smoking right there in the school. It was so interesting to me because I'm like, are these people are they out to smoke out here all day long? Do you remember those days?
Oh, I do. I remember people blowing up toilets with big firecrackers and the smoking lounge and do you remember Stark the Narc?
No. Oh, Mr. Stark.
So he was like a police officer in the school. We called him Stark the Narc because if you did anything bad, he'd find out about it.
Yeah, his son was Kenny Stark. He played a few years after you. I don't know if you knew Kenny.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's pretty good player. So you know, it's interesting. You were a big, muscular guy. You weren't one of those like a Tim Carney, one of your contemporaries was, you know, a tall, thin guy. You were very well put together, like a kid would be today, with the weight if they were doing weight training and stuff. So were you always tall, and did you lift weights? How did you get so big?
When I was 12, I was 6 feet tall.
Mhm.
So I was always, there's a picture of me on a football team in Ramstein where I'm in the back row and I'm taller than the coaches, you know? So I was sort of always that way. Now, when I got to Robinson, I was somewhere in the neighborhood of 6'4" and about 165 pounds. And when I graduated, I was 6'8" and about 225.
Yeah.
So I put on a tremendous amount of weight, and I didn't lift weights all that much in high school. I really didn't. I just put on the weight. You know, if I had to go back and think about my ideal playing weight, I think it would have taken me back to my sophomore year when I was skinny. You know, about 6'6", maybe 195, 200 pounds, maybe less, because I was quicker, I could jump higher, and I think I was kind of a natural born swing player rather than being some kind of power forward or much less a center. But it was just kind of heaped on me. I had to go in that direction, you know.
Yeah. Well, so that 8th grade year, so your first full year at Robinson, did you make some inroads? And because I know you'd gotten cut in Germany from the basketball team, so did you start to develop your skills at the 8th grade year?
I played on a Braddock Road boys club team, 8th grade. And I don't remember the name. I have the picture of our team right over there. And yes, things were coming together. Our best player, though, was a kid named Domingo Diamond. And Domingo Diamond was accidentally shot by his little brother. They were playing with their father's gun. And I remember going to his funeral during our season then. It was a huge wake-up call to things like that. But Domingo would have ended up being a great, like all-American player, I can tell you. But nobody knows about him, you know?
Yeah. Did you play against some of the other players in that league that you'd end up facing in high school?
Say again, please.
Did you end up playing against some of the other players that you end up playing in high school, like, you know, the guy like Holbert and the guys from Lake Braddock that you had faced?
No, I don't recall.
Yeah.
I don't recall that.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I was going to basketball camps or starting to do that kind of thing and getting familiar with some of these people, like the Nocky brothers, and that kind of thing. But I just I can't place anybody I played against in 8th grade playing against in high school.
Yeah. Well, so when you entered your freshman year, who was the Robinson varsity coach? Was it still Willie Jones?
Yes.
Yeah. And what did you think about Coach Jones?
Willie, it must have been the beginning of 8th grade. And I was walking with a class out to the intramural fields on a nice day to go do whatever, play softball or whatever. And Willie Jones, his class was coming in. And he stopped and he looked at me, and I didn't know who he was. And he said, "Hey, who are you?" And I said, "Mike Tissaw, sir." And he goes, "How tall are you?" And I told him, and he said, "You play basketball?" I was like, "Oh, I love basketball." He was just like, he started freaking out. And the next thing I knew, he wanted me to come to the gym and to see what I could do. And he was very, very excited about me. And, you know, he gave me a lot of confidence to really, really start working hard at the game. I thought that if somebody like him saw something in me, then maybe there's something there. So, you know, and he was wonderful. I think I posted on Facebook about how he would shoot around. You know, other people have posted. He would shoot around. He was a really good shooter then. He would poke fun at you. I always thought that he had been pretty heavily influenced by Muhammad Ali in the way that he talked, you know, very boisterous, funny, just really cool stuff.
Yeah. Red Jenkins has a lot of great Will Jones stories too. Well, so your freshman year, did you play JV or did you play varsity right away?
Yes, JV, and that was under O'Brien.
And I guess he wasn't a very nice guy, was he?
Well, you know, I didn't wish to give the wrong vibe when I posted something on him recently. I liked him. But he liked corporal punishment. I mean, if the team was sloppy in practice, if we didn't do what he asked us to do, it was just on the line. Get on the line, 8:30. And then I think I mentioned, you know, one day I saw him kind of like he was really exceptionally pissed off at us. And I saw him kind of like lean back. He had us run an 8:30. And he kind of leaned back and he was thinking like he was inventing something new, some new form of punishment. And he said, crab 8:30. And we were like, what? Like on all fours, your hands and your feet, all fours, crab 8:30. And you're thinking, you know, that is absolutely impossible. But he made us do the whole thing. People were exhausted. It hurt your fingers. And then we didn't make it on time, of course. And then he was like, well, you didn't make it on time. Another 8:30. It's just funny, funny stuff. I liked him, and O'Brien and Willie Jones really did work in tandem. They worked for each other. O'Brien knew that Willie would steal players from him in mid-season and things like that, and he did.
Who was on varsity that year? That must have been Chris Scott and Craig Brewer. They're in the varsity team that year?
Craig Brewer, Joel Patten. I'm not sure about the rest of them. Those guys I drove into Anacostia with the summer before 9th grade. They played in the Police Boys Club League that played in Anacostia. And that was a huge wake-up call. You know, there I was, not even yet a 9th grader, playing with these guys who were going into their senior year against really great DC players down in Anacostia. You know, that was cool.
Well, so your sophomore year, you play varsity, and that's a very famous year in Northern Virginia basketball, because many feel that the 1977 TC Williams team is the best team in the history of the Northern Virginia. They won the state tournament. They had little Willie Jackson and Frank Holloway. So they were in our district. Do you remember that year? How did Robinson do that year?
Oh, you know, I don't know about after that time, but I can't imagine another Northern Virginia team that was better than that team. I was so intimidated by Holloway that I remember lining up for a free throw, and he was on my left. And I just hauled off and elbowed him. I mean, it was because I was scared of him that I did that. And I was like, he's going to hit me. And he looked over and he goes, man, you don't need to be doing that. You know? And he didn't bother me the rest of the game. I mean, it didn't bother him.
Yeah.
But I had to like get something going with him, you know, and they kicked our butts pretty well sophomore year, but those were very exciting games.
Yeah.
All of the TC Williams games are kind of like my most memorable games.
Yeah. Did you guys play them close at all, or did they beat you pretty soundly? Both, I guess maybe even 3 games if you played in districts.
Sophomore year,
Yeah, the team that was undefeated. Were you able to keep it close against them?
I don't recall. I don't think we did.
Yeah.
I mean, we weren't a very good team my sophomore year with Doug Krupper. Krupper was a good coach and everything, but we were really kind of young and raw.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, the next year was a great year for you. And was that the first year Roscoe Dean coached at Robinson?
Yes.
Yeah. So Roscoe Dean came from Lee. He had taken Lee to the state final with Bucky Romans, who you mentioned earlier, and they had lost to Clyde Austin and Maggie Walker in the state final in '76. So came to Robinson, bigger school. What was Roscoe Dean like? I liked Roscoe Dean a lot. I got to know him pretty well. What was he like to play for?
I really, really liked, of all the coaches I've had, I like Roscoe Dean more than any of them. He had a relaxed, natural authority to him. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need to be really demonstrative. You just respected him and looked up to him. And oftentimes while we were warming up for practice, he would do a handstand on one side of the court and walk on his hands all the way down the court.
Is that right?
And he was a big guy.
He was a big guy.
Yeah, so he was powerful and he just commanded respect that way. And the other thing that I remember about him is how much he emphasized the team concept. More than any coach I've ever had, he needed to end every practice on a positive note, which a lot of coaches want to do that. But what was really cool about what he did was that the practice didn't need to be finished on a positive note by one of the best players. If a player who really hardly ever played did something good at the end of practice, Roscoe would say, "Beauty," and he'd end the practice. And oftentimes he would have us all get into the center little circle, the jump circle, so try to get 12 or 14 kids into this one little tiny spot, which was a lot of fun. People had to jump on top of each other and it was just fun. Yeah. So the team concept was really, really cool with him.
Yeah. It was unfortunate with Coach Dean because right before I played varsity my junior year, the wheels fall off. And they were 3-18, and he got disillusioned with the coaching and got out of it. And I always thought he was such a great guy, so I never got a chance to play for him. Another one of your teammates who ended up playing quarterback for UVA was Todd Kirtley. What was he like?
Todd was just a really good all-around athlete and had very good leadership skills, and you would expect that from a quarterback, you know. I think I always used to think of Todd and Winston Streeter and Mark Kranitsky as being like the trifecta toughness of our team. I mean, you can be tough because you're a good scorer, because you're a good rebounder, but then there's the real tough stuff. And Streeter, Kranitsky, Kirtley were all quite tough because they also played football. I should say, just occurred to me, Mark Kranitsky is the only guy I ever knew who came off the bench during a basketball game and was in a fight with another player within 3 seconds.
He's a tough guy.
I-
Well, another tough guy that he didn't mention, and I know this because I used to play against him when he come back from a semester break from Western Carolina, was Greg Dennis. Not only was he a tough guy, he was a great shooter and he was a fierce competitor. Did you enjoy playing with Greg?
Greg was a very intelligent person overall,
Mhm.
and a really fine athlete who worked very, very hard at the game. And we were a little bit competitive, as you might expect, the two leading scorers on the team. Sometimes I took a shot that he thought that I should probably pass out to him and vice versa. But I'll tell you what, and junior year, simply because Greg was on the court, they couldn't afford to double up on me like they did my senior year with Greg as a threat. Says enough that Greg went on to have a fantastic college career.
Yeah. Well, you guys ended up going to the state tournament that year. Do you remember who you guys beat in the regional final?
Woodson.
You beat Woodson. Okay, so that must have been Holbert's junior year. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, because the senior year they lost to Mount Vernon in the final, Derek Steele and those guys. So then you go to the state tournament, which is, I mean, for any high school kid to go to UVA and play in the Final Four is such a great experience. Taking the bus down there. Do you remember that experience at all?
I have a vague memory of how it was a little bit strange that our team was together like in a hotel room, and how against Ferguson, we were apprehensive because they were undefeated and they were talented, and they reminded me of the T.C. Williams team that we talked about earlier. And when we came out of our locker room and down a hallway to go out onto the court, we were to come out on the court before Ferguson, but they were lined up there as we went past them, and they were doing some big macho chant trying to intimidate us. And I personally couldn't believe how the first half went. I mean, we had them scared. They couldn't believe what was happening to them. I could tell. They were extremely frustrated. But they went in and they made adjustments during halftime, and they did a great job during the second half, and then won that game.
Yeah. They had a great guard, 5'11" guy, but I can't remember his name. And I don't even know if he played at the next level. Well, the next year, your senior year and my 7th grade year, so it was the first time I ever got a chance to see you play, because I didn't go to games when I was in 6th grade. But you had a player that I used to like a lot because I used to see him play pickup, Joe McGlaughlin. And Joe was a guy who didn't play at all his junior year, and then he came off the bench and he made 3rd-team All-Region out of nowhere. He just seemed like he got on fire and had a really good season. Do you remember playing a lot with Joe?
Well, Joe and I played together in junior varsity under O'Brien. And Joe had all kinds of potential back then. He was a bit inconsistent, and I think he was overall kind of an at-risk kid. And so the one thing I can recall, 2 things about Joe. 3. One time, I think it was Roscoe Dean had us playing one-on-one full court, different players, which is kind of weird, one-on-one full court. And Joe and I were just elbowing each other like crazy. it was kind of fun, but we were whacking each other. So he was competitive that way. Another thing, we cut down the net one time during, I don't know, a district championship game or whatever. And Joe, in his exuberance, he was the last one to cut the net, and he took the whole thing and he put it over his head. And I was like, you got to be kidding me, you know? And we went into the locker room. He came into the locker room. He took it off his head and he put it on mine. And I will never forget that. It was just so sweet, you know. He was a good person. And then also senior year, I used to get triple teamed once in a while. I remember a game, particularly, I think, at Chantilly. They were triple teaming me once in a while. They had some guy following me right in my face and two people on each side. And Joe just drifted in and out on the inside, and I just kept hitting him right under the basket, and he would just lay it in, you know. And I think that was his highest scoring game. I don't know what he scored that game, but Joe was cool to have on the team, definitely.
Yeah, I enjoyed. Now, was Tim Leber on that team, or was that the year later that Tim came? Did you play with Tim Leber?
My senior year,
Yeah.
Tim and I worked out a lot over the summer before my senior year. We practiced every day. We did drills because we knew with Greg Dennis being gone and Winston Streeter and Todd Kirtley and Gminski and the other players being gone, that we were going to have a rough go my senior year. And we worked really hard together, and we're still in touch. I invited him to my induction to the Hall of Fame, and he came.
Oh, is that right?
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll share this with him, because Tim and I were neighbors, and you know, I worshiped him. He used to take me around. We go to Oakview and dunk in those little small baskets, and he would take me through some drills. I learned a lot about playing point guard from Tim. He was a great guy. He had transferred from Bruton in Williamsburg, and they had been to the state tournament on the AA level the year before. So he was definitely a seasoned player. He knew what he was doing. And he was you know, he's really quick with the ball. He had a nice pop-up jumper. And I enjoyed that team. I'm trying to think. I think even Lake Braddock may have won the district that year, Ross Taylor, but I'm not sure. Or maybe Robinson won it. But in the region, I remember you playing against Tim Kearney, I believe. But we ended up, who beat us in the region? Because I know Mount Vernon ended up beating Woodson in the final.
My senior year?
Yeah.
Boy, I don't remember.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah.
I don't remember. I do about Tim Leber. I think his big coming out game was when we played TC Williams my senior year at TC Williams. Yeah. They had Holton and Arnie Russell. I don't remember Holton's first name.
Yeah.
But these were two tall, big, athletic guys. And I mean, I got hit by a BB warming up.
Wow.
Somebody shot me with a BB. That gym was packed. It was, they wanted to beat us. And Tim played a great game that game. And he threw me a pass with seconds left. And I just turned around and put it up, and it went in, and we won by 2 points, I think. And the small Robinson contingent went absolutely crazy and ran down to the floor, and the TC people were pissed off.
Yeah. Well, you got a chance to play in a small gym in college. Do you remember those big crowds that were at high school games in those days? Because I remember coming. I mean, Robinson, we would get 3,000 on a regular season game. That must have been a very exciting time to play high school basketball.
Yeah, those full gyms were totally awesome. We had a great gym at Robinson. When we moved to Northern Virginia from Germany, my dad took us around to different schools in Northern Virginia. We went to Lake Braddock first, and then to Robinson. And he was figuring out where we were going to live. And I told my dad, I said, I like the Robinson gym the most. So we moved into Kings Park West.
Yeah. So, well, your dad's got good taste. He's got a good thought process to make decisions. So I did a podcast with Red Jenkins, I mentioned before, a long time Woodson coach, and he said one of the reasons why you got recruited on the next level is because you did really well. You did real well in the Dapper Dan Classic, and I think Coach Jenkins maybe even coached you in that game. Do you remember that game? That apparently there was another big prospect that you just destroyed that night.
The Dapper Dan is a really cool memory. We had the East team, the West team, the Southwest team, and the Midwest team. The best high school players in the country. The only player that I can think of who was not there was Isaiah Thomas.
Mm.
I never got to play against Isaiah Thomas in those different all-star games during my senior year. But I don't know who I might have played against. I mean, I was in a dunk contest with Dominique Wilkins.
How'd that turn out?
I mean, great players. Steve Stepanovich, Greg Kite, who ended up on the Celtics for years.
Mm-hmm. I think went to Purdue.
Yes. That was an incredible tournament. The Capital Classic that year was incredible. Just the players, I mean, Sam Bowie and Ralph Sampson, and I'm slipping on a name here. He now does. I'm slipping on that name. But just these players who were going to end up being NBA All-Stars. James Worthy was there. And I was learning a lot about myself at that point, playing with those guys. Yeah.
Well, so I think you were the second leading scorer of the Capital Classic for the home team, which was amazing. So when did you become interested in going to Duke, and what were your other schools that you were thinking about?
Was I really the second leading scorer?
Yeah, I think you got either 8 or 10 in the Capital Classic.
Oh, I don't recall that. I'm surprised. Yeah. I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of your.
I was just saying, how'd you become interested in going to Duke? And you were there. It was Bill Foster at the time was their coach.
I had official visits to Ohio State, Kentucky, NC State. That might have been unofficial. Duke, and Maryland was an unofficial visit. By the way, when I went to Maryland, I was sitting courtside. They got me really good seats when Ernie Graham scored 44 points, which is still the record.
Yeah.
What a game. And West Virginia was unofficial. And my dad wanted me to go to Kentucky. And Kentucky turned me off because of the accommodations that they had for their players. I mean, outside of each player's personal room in the athletic dorm, they had a half basketball on the wall with their name on a plaque. It was like, come on, I want to live in a regular dorm or something, So I visited Duke, and I was really impressed by the camaraderie of the players. The campus really, really impressed me. Jim Spanarkel took me to a Halloween party. And I was also very intrigued by the prospect of them being rated #1 in the NCAA Division I the next year. I kind of wanted to have an experience like that.
Yeah. I believe they had lost in the final to Kentucky the year before. Is that right? That was the Jack Givens game.
Goose Givens, yes.
Yeah.
The players at Duke used to talk about how he Givens was so hot that he took this crazy shot from the baseline and it skipped off the side of the backboard and went in, just like right in. The guy was so hot. But yeah, I like the prospect of playing with Gene Banks, Mike Gminski,
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. Yeah.
So your first year at Duke, Duke is, as you said before, it's a beautiful campus. The buildings are just stunning. Just the scenery, it's really spread out. Did you enjoy the campus life there?
Absolutely. I wanted to live on the quad. In my sophomore year, I got a room on the quad, and Krzyzewski did not like that. With Foster, I lived in the freshman dorms, so
So what was
campus life.
What was Bill Foster like? You only played for him for 1 year, but you must have liked him. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have chosen Duke.
He commanded a lot of respect because of what he had done and how far he had brought the program. He was a friendly man. He was a very organized man. He really knew how to teach a full court trapping press. He used to run the films for us when we did a good job in games, and he would just say, look, you guys look like a bunch of ants. They're just cooperating all the way down the court, and that's what we want. In retrospect, I don't know what to think otherwise about Bill Foster, because I kind of suspect that he knew when he was recruiting me and Tommy Emma and Chip England, I think he knew he was going to leave. I think about some of the ways in which we freshmen were dealt with in light of that. Like, one of the first things that happened to me my freshman year in college on the basketball court was that they didn't want me shooting a turnaround jumper anymore, a turnaround fadeaway jumper. My hero when we came to DC when I was a youngster was Elvin Hayes. And I wanted to shoot that fadeaway turnaround jumper like he did. And I got good at it, man. And they took it away from me. They didn't let me shoot it. So I think that had Bill Foster planned on being there longer, that I don't think they would have done that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he was a good man. He was a very good man.
Well, you played with two ACC legends, at least, probably a couple more actually, but right away you played with Gene Banks and Mike Gminski, and they were two important players, along with Jim Spanarkel, Bender also, I guess, in the Final Four run from the year before. What were Banks from Philadelphia and Gminski? I forgot where Gminski was from. What were they like?
Spanarkel left the year before I got there.
That's right, yeah.
So I was thinking about this today. How did he take me out for my recruiting visit? I don't know how that happened. He might have been back visiting the campus or something. But anyway, Mike Gminski, very, very competitive guy, a tough guy, great jump hook, of course. And he liked practicing against me. He had, there was another player before me who he practiced against, and he told me, he goes, it's so much better practicing against you. Because I could, push him and, all that kind of thing. And Gene Banks, honestly, to this day, I really do believe that Gene Banks is the funniest person I've ever known.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, unbelievably funny guy. The things that he would pull, I really can't even go into it because some of the things he did were just so ridiculous, but ridiculously funny. And, he broke a couple of backboards in practice, and just a super, super player.
Yeah.
you know, he did his share of partying too, but some of us did that, you know.
Yeah. That's what college is about, I guess. Your freshman year, you guys win the ACC and you beat Maryland in the final. Do you remember that game?
I have the plaque right here,
Mhm.
right to my right,
Mhm.
with a little strip of net. Yes, that was incredible, exciting. Buck Williams was jumping up to tap in a shot at the very last split second, and Ken Denard undercut him. If you go and look at the video, Ken Denard just backs into him and undercuts his legs out from under him, and tense. And playing at the Greensboro Coliseum was really, really cool. There's something to be said about coming down the tunnel and looking up at this kind of dark arena with this giant cloud of tobacco smoke. You know, they don't do it that way anymore, as you know. Back when the courts used to be lit and the crowd was dark, was so cool, you know, and the Greensboro Coliseum was, I mean, you'd be running around the court, you could smell tobacco smoke.
Yeah.
Really
Maybe that's why they
cool.
call it Tobacco Road, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, your sophomore year, in comes Coach Krzyzewski, who's been coaching at Army. And, you know, it was an interesting choice. I mean, you know, now he's one of the winningest coaches in college basketball history. But at the time, you know, what did you think about Coach K when he first came? And could you have any indication that this guy would have the kind of success that he ended up having?
I've had 3 requests from sports writers in the past 6 or 8 months to do interviews about the first year there. 2 of them were from ESPN. And then just minutes before we started this meeting, I got a note from a guy from Sports Illustrated. People are interested in that first year. And when I was called to Tom Butter's office, the athletic director, to meet our new coach, I mean, I was such an idiot back then. I was wearing a tie-dyed muscle shirt. I had a Fu Manchu mustache and hair down to my shoulders, which I still do. And I went into the office and he was like, there we were, and he was like, okay, gentlemen, this is your new head coach, Mike Krzyzewski. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard of this guy, you know. He did recruit me when he was at Army, but I just never, when I got those letters from Army or Navy or whatever, I didn't even open them. And we got to meet him and shake his hand. And he shook my hand and he said, I hope this is temporary. Right? So it's like, oh, my appearance. And then later in the day, I was like, wait a minute, did he mean like temporary on the team?
Yeah.
You know, Mike Krzyzewski and I had an up and down relationship. He was very encouraging early on. I remember when I had my first game of the season, my sophomore year, he put a letter in my mailbox that was, I think I still have it, really, really encouraging. And we had a good year, my sophomore year. It was okay. And the thing that bothered me going forward was that he was all man-to-man. He would not play zone under any circumstances ever. Even out of bounds plays under the opponent's basket. So can you imagine Dean Smith sitting there going, okay, we're getting ready to play Duke. What do we have to prepare for? Oh, all they play is man-to-man. They also play nothing but man-to-man underneath the basket. Hey, you, Michael Jordan, why don't we just throw the ball in the air for you and you can just dunk it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We were too predictable, but we had Vince Taylor and Gene Banks. Ken Denard was a good player. And, I kind of brought up the rear end of the caboose. I mean, we had Tommy Emma and Chip England, good shooters, and we did okay. Junior year was a lot different, much, much different. One day, Mike Krzyzewski had been getting a lot of heat in the press about being unwilling to play a zone. I mean, every team in the ACC played zone, at least sometimes. And he finally broke down. And I'll never forget it. We're in practice and he said, F it, we're going to play zone. So here's what we want you to do. And the players were all sitting there looking at each other and we're realizing, my goodness, my high school coach was better at teaching zone because he hadn't done it before.
Yeah.
I mean, he learned under Bobby Knight and this kind of stubborn machismo, man to man. It's got to be man to man, So that was my problem with him. He thought I lifted weights too much. He thought I partied too much. He was right about that. But overall, ultimately, we had a good relationship, and he's just a hard-driven guy. Really, he needed to get the players that he needed to do what he wanted to do, and he finally did that my senior year with Alarie and Johnny Dawkins, Jay Billis as well. And it was very clear that that was the future. Tissaw is sitting the bench this year. I was fine with it,
Yeah. Krzyzewski comes across when he's interviewed and stuff, he's always talking about relationships, and it's always so profound. It's never like about basketball. It's always about relationships and developing guys. Is that the way he is in real life, or is that for the cameras? Or do you find, or maybe he's even changed? It's been many years.
I never really found him profound.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that he used to say to us, me in particular, every so often was, whenever you came up with some kind of a complaint or issue, he would say, yes, but you can control that. Yeah, but you can control that.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the things that you can't control.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. One of the most underrated players in ACC to me was Mark Alarie. I really liked him. I thought he played really well with the Bullets for a couple of years. Might have been the Wizards by then, maybe still Bullets. What do you remember about Mark Alarie?
My senior year with Alarie, Dawkins there, one thing that used to make me so angry in practice was that they were allowed to just beat up on us, to foul us. And they didn't call fouls on those guys, but they called fouls on people like me. So that brought about some tension. But I remember Alarie as being just, he was 1 inch taller than me, I think. But he had like long hands, long arms, and a really soft touch.
Yeah.
And he was quick-ish. He wasn't incredibly quick or anything, but he could just rely on those physical tools, but the touch as well that he had developed. Really, really good player, awesome player.
Yeah. In the ACC those days, the crowds were incredible. I mean, they still are, but they were incredible. And it was tough. It was sometimes very tough to win on the road. Still is. Do you have any great stories of going on the road? And was it really intimidating when the officials might be homers and the crowd is going crazy and yelling at you?
The one venue within the ACC that I remember above all the others was Maryland. Okay, Cole Fieldhouse. The rumor was, and I believe it. In fact, I know that the rumor was to be true. He used to put 5, 6, 7, 8 guys behind our bench who were just students, drunk, insulting us the entire game, just saying horrible things.
Yeah.
And the reason I know that this was actually true is that I worked at the Maryland basketball camp one summer, and I went to some bar on campus there, the place to go. Maybe you know the name of it, I don't know anymore. But I walked in there, and there were these 5 guys sitting at the bar. And I walked up to them, and they were looking at me, and they kind of like jumped up and said, "Hey man, we're sorry, man. It was just all in fun." I was like, "So you're the guys behind the bench?" And they're like, "Yeah." So we met and had beers together and had fun. So Maryland was abusive. Maryland was abusive. Wow. But the other places were fine.
Barry Parkhill, UVA legend, said the exact same thing. He played probably 7, 8 years before you, maybe more than that. And he said, I asked him about one of his teammates, Al Drummond, who was the first Black player to play for UVA, which was the last team to have a Black player. And I said, did Al get a hard time on the road? And he said, I don't know about Al, but everyone hated to go to Maryland. Their fans were ridiculous. So he said the exact same thing that you did. Yeah.
Lefty set that stuff up. He set it up.
Yeah.
We never did that, but anyway.
How about great opponents? Who are some of the tougher players you had to play? Because I mean, look, there were so many great players in the ACC at those times, but any of them particularly come to mind when I say the guys you had to try to guard?
I've always said this. The toughest competition I had in college was Buck Williams. Buck Williams was a problem.
Yeah.
We were the same height, the same weight, but he could jump so much higher than me, and he was stronger, and he was meaner, and he had such a beautiful touch. I didn't know what to do with him. Sampson, of course. One particular game against NC State, I remember playing against Chuck Nevitt. I mean, the guy's like 7'6". It's like, what do you do with that? And then, of course, on North Carolina, the 3 players, Sam Perkins, Michael Jordan, and who am I leaving out? I mentioned him earlier.
James Worthy.
Worthy. I mean, what a nightmare. What a nightmare. And then down at Clemson, am I going to remember his name? I think he's an NBA. What was his name? Larry Nance. Larry Nance. You talk about a stick figure. They threw him an alley-oop one time and he jumped up and just put it down behind his head. Larry Nance. I guess going out there against NC State, these were guys that I looked up to. I mean, all of a sudden I'm out on the court with Hawkeye Whitney. And then Maryland, my goodness, I watched Ernie Graham pour in 44 points when I was in high school, and I'm out on the court and I'm playing against him, and I'm playing against Albert King and And who else am I thinking of other than Buck Williams? But Buck Williams, geez.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so you finished college, and when you look back at your development, the game has changed so much today with the 3-pointers. When the kids are developing, there's AAU. So you basically stumbled upon Robinson as an 8th grader, and you really didn't have much experience. And you turned out to be an ACC player, a great player. Nowadays, you would have been, picked aside years ago. You'd have had a lot of AAU experience. Your parents would have given you private trainers. I mean, the way they coach kids up today is a completely different world than in the world that you were raised in. Do you ever think about what kind of player Mike Tissaw would have been in today's game?
Ooh, that's your toughest question. Well, hopefully I would have recognized the importance of the 3-point shot very early on and really worked on it. I mean, in college, I was known pretty much as a brick mason, but in high school, I had a pretty nice touch and I could hit shots and I could hit outside shots, but the 3-point shot really, really changed things. There are certain things I don't like about the game anymore. The shot clock, no matter what the level, should be 1 minute. 1 minute. It's just, and then going to games, I haven't been to an NBA game in a really long time. Just the sensory overload of all the music and everything between during timeouts and all of that. What I would have been like, I don't know. I don't know. You know what? It just occurs to me. There was something that I wanted to say to you, and it just popped back in my mind. I was about to forget it. I've been on your Facebook site there, and I've looked through a lot of things, and I'm just kind of new to it, as you know. But 2 players during roughly 77, 78, 79, Northern Virginia, that I don't think I've seen mentioned. Paul Gracza at Annandale, Paul Gracza and Kevin Darmondy at
O'Connell.
Bishop O'Connell, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the 2 best players I played against in high school were Paul Gracza and Kevin Darmondy.
Interesting.
Now Kevin Darmondy, I only played against in a summer league game. But I saw in the newspaper all the time, in the journal, all the time, he was putting up big, big numbers. And I was like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
He played for some, private league, Catholic school sort of thing. So he wasn't a lot, and he got the short end of the stick on that because of the league that he did play in.
Yeah.
But when I played against him in summer league, that guy was cat quick, could jump like crazy, very beautiful shot. And the thing that was cool about him was that he's a left-hander. And so he was very deceptive. Paul Gracza, 6'8", skinny, really nice guy. I think he went into the ministry and is probably still in the ministry. But he made me nervous playing against Annandale the time we played against them. And then I got to play on a summer league team with him after I graduated from high school. He might have been a year ahead of me. And during the summer league, this was 1 or 2 years after I graduated from high school, or the summer after. He was a better player than I was. Paul Gracza. He could just dunk on anyone. He was this really long, tall dude, very skinny, very quick. So for you, the man who's running the show, on your Facebook site, which is a beautiful thing, Darmondy and Gracza, I seriously encourage people to dredge up some memories of those two guys.
You know, what's interesting is that one of the guys that helped me start the site is a guy named Keith Leonard, and his brother Jeff Leonard would have had to have played with at Annandale with Gracza. So I am surprised that Jeff hasn't mentioned him, because Jeff's on the site as well. Jeff was a good, I think Jeff averaged 20 a game himself. So Annandale must have had a pretty good team.
The first time that Leonard contacted me on the Facebook site, I told him, if you know where Paul Gracza is, let me know. I mean, Leonard might have averaged more points per game than Gracza, but in terms of big men, people I lined up against, Gracza. I think that Kevin Darmondy might have been 6'6", but those two guys, their names are kind of missing in the lore, if you will.
Yeah. Well, thanks for passing that along. We'll make sure we'll make up for that deficit. So Mike, tell me, so what happened after college? And I know you're a professor. So what did you end up doing with all these years? And you know, what's going on in your life these days?
Well, I wanted to be some kind of a writer. I was a philosophy major at Duke. And I did my little thing with the Dallas Cowboys. And then kind of like went out in the world. And, you know, the shortest way to answer your question is to say that even through most of college, I wanted to know, forgive me for referring to myself in the third person. I wanted to know who Mike Tissaw was without the basketball. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was working on a very serious personal journey, and I needed to answer that question. So I wanted to strip it all away, walk away from basketball, get completely away from it, which I did. And my military, my background in being a military dependent fit right in with that, because you go from place to place to place, and you just got to get it behind you and go forward. So I got into, after I did my tryout with the Dallas Cowboys, I worked construction. I worked construction for a while I was living in North Carolina with my girlfriend at the time. And then I came back home and got into journalism basically through my 20s, and then started thinking this can't be all there is to life. Then I started snooping around Georgetown, their psychology department. I was reading a lot in psychology, and got into graduate school at Georgetown for a PhD in general psychology. While I worked those 10 years at GW Medical Center in their surgery clinic as a physiology laboratory coordinator. Don't ask me how I got that job. Long story. But anyway, I got my PhD, and then I was like, you know, maybe I can be a professor. And they gave me some great opportunities at Georgetown to teach as an adjunct. Lots of different courses. I was getting good evaluations from students. I was thinking maybe I was kind of a natural. I kind of like getting up in front of people and yapping my head off, you know. It took a while to get used to that, but and so then I started looking around all over the place, and State University of New York at Potsdam gave me a call one day, and I came up here and gave a job talk, and I've been up here ever since.
Wow. And the weather, you okay with the cold weather and the snow and all that? That's okay with you?
I'm glad you asked. Take a guess at what the potential wind chills around here are going to be tonight.
It must be negative. I'll say -10.
Minus 45.
Wow.
Now, that doesn't mean when I go out and walk my dog here in a little bit, I'm going to be encountering minus 45 wind chills. Certain parts of our county are going to get wind gusts up to that. The high temperature tomorrow, I think, is supposed to be -1.
Mm.
But this place up here is not nearly as cold as it used to be.
Yeah,
Not nearly.
yeah, it's kind of sad. Anyway.
It's actually quite good.
Yeah, one guy I want to connect you with is Pat Toomey. I don't know if you ever heard of Pat, but he played for Edison in 1960, class of 65 or 66, all-state basketball, football, and baseball. Ended up going to Vanderbilt. Then went to the Cowboys. Had a great career in Dallas. But he's a writer. He wrote the book on Any Given Sunday that became the same name of the movie Any Given Sunday.
Yeah.
Brilliant writer, but you guys are so much alike. You guys are. I did a podcast with him, which I'll share with you. But you guys should connect because you guys have a lot in common. You have the same vibe. He was, also very much a giant on the court too. But Mike, it's funny. When I was a kid, we were in awe of you. I mean, not only were you a great player, but you were just enormous. So you'd walk down the hall or whatever. We were just like, wow, that's like, it was almost like an NBA player to us. So it was really cool just to talk to you so many years later.
Well, thank you. Robinson was wonderful, wasn't it?
It was. That's why I'm so connected to it, because I had such a great experience there.
Yeah, it was really, really great. And I should have gone back and visited more.
Yeah.
When I went to Duke. I remember during basketball practice one time, Joel Patten showed up at the gym and he had his Duke Letterman's jacket on. I was like, wow. And Bobby Brower went to Duke.
Yeah, big guy.
And I went over to Bobby Brower's house a couple of times to listen to music and stuff and ran into him at Duke. And that guy is probably the greatest athlete in the history of Northern Virginia.
Yeah, that's what
so
say.
Far.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Yeah, it's probably either him or Pat. Toomey was all state in 3 sports. I didn't be a close competition.
All state in 3 sports. Wow.
Yeah. So look, we have to. Next time you're in town, let me know. Let's meet up, and then I would love for you to send this to Tim Leber. I haven't seen Tim since you guys graduated years before me, so it'd be great to reconnect with Tim as well.
I got a Christmas card from Tim, and I think 2 years in a row now I've tried to call him, but I think he's changed his phone number.
Okay.
So I'm going to write him a letter, just snail mail, and to try to get him to email me or something to find out what his phone number is. And I do want to tell him about this, what you're doing. He'll really, really enjoy it.
Oh, good. Yeah, we even have his picture up at Bruton on the site as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, Mike, look, man, thanks a lot for doing this. Yeah, you were great. Such great stories. I beat Sports Illustrated to the scoop. So it was a big night for Nova Legends.
Fantastic. Thank you for what you're doing. And it's been great to meet you and get to know you. Yeah, you too, Mike. But let's definitely keep in touch, and hopefully, if you're ever in town, we'll get a chance to meet in person. Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Until then, we'll communicate on Facebook. Okay, thank you. All right, thanks, Mike. Thanks again, buddy. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.